What makes a killer's rework good? There's plenty of elements that go into redesigning a killer, and in order to classify a rework as good, a series of metaphorical checkboxes need to be checked. The first and biggest checkbox is to tick off the issues that led to the rework. It can be as simple as that. However, if there are multiple issues, they need to each be addressed. As for missing the mark and completely failing a character through reworking them, it's much easier. Overbuffing a character, or over-nerfing them, is extremely common in Dead by Daylight, and not just something linked to reworks. However, the next aspect, and the one I consider the absolute biggest factor in determining the success of a rework, is if it leads to the character being watered down from what they originally were. While characters like the Singularity and the Trickster were severely watered down from their original design, those were not intended to be reworks. I like to classify them as kit updates. While I could explain this myself, I think it would be better coming from a former game designer from Behavior themselves.
I said rework for you, I said update for you. What's the difference between an update and a rework?
So when we're talking about characters specifically, an update is like what we do with the Wraith and what we do with the Legion, what you recently saw. Ultimately, we're not changing the power drastically. You're still playing them the same. We're just going to be tweaking some numbers and ways of how it actually functions. With the rework, we're going to be changing the power completely. You can expect to play the killer differently. And we're touching add-ons, the power itself, the way he plays, the way people experience him, most importantly.
The character we're going to discuss today suffered from all three of them from one singular rework. In an attempt to fix the pain points that their original kit had, we put a metaphorical smiley face band-aid over a knife wound. Or, for this example, more fittingly, a razor glove wound. This video is going to cover the first ever rework in Dead by Daylight history, when Behavior revisited the Nightmare in July of 2019, nearly 2 years after he released. Now, quickly, I do want to say that I know the Doctor received a semi-rework called the Doctor Cube in patch 1.6.1. However, Doctor performed very similar to how he did beforehand, just a bit more cleaned up. In my opinion, this is the first proper rework a character was ever given. Back on track though, this video is going to cover the intentions and implementations of the Nightmare's initial rework, as well as the legacy it's left behind. We'll be comparing this rework to some of the more successful ones that we've seen since then, before finally wrapping up. Instead of me putting words in the mouth of the balancing team, I went all the way back to the 3rd year anniversary stream where this rework was first shown, and took direct clips from it to give context to all my points. Before we get to that, I want to cover our first of the very, very many questions that I will ask in this video. Why did Behavior rework Freddy? It's a story as old as time. Boy meets girl, boys invited into girl's super exclusive murder monster game, girls paying customers refuse to learn how to live with the boy gets ruthlessly nerfed into the ground despite not being very good in the first place, girl decides she can fix boy. It's a tale as old as time. Before Freddy was reworked, he had some genuinely major issues that needed to be cleaned up. 99% of the issues came from the killer experience. This gameplay is taken from a private server, and as you can see, Freddy could not. The blur put on his vision for anything past his immediate arm span is one of the ugliest, messiest things I've seen in Dead by Daylight. And as someone who played this version of Freddy often, I had forgotten just how bad this was. You might be able to ignore this if Freddy had a strong power, but let's take a look at that power. So, Freddy has to pull survivors into the dream world over a period of 7 seconds, which, granted, could be lowered via the use of certain add-ons. Once in the dream world, survivors suffered from 50% slower repairs on generators, healing, and exit gates. Once outside 24 meters, Freddy would see the aura of survivors that are asleep, and that was it. So, there's a bit to cover here. Freddy was very, very bad, I'll just tell you that straight up. But despite that, survivors did not like him like they do modern bad killers like the Ghostface or Bubba. What made people dislike him so much is something that we still suffer from today, and that is the almighty skill issue. Freddy's counter was missing one singular skill check, or cooperating with someone who did miss a skill check. Much like right now, missed skill checks will wake a survivor up and rip them out of the dream world. However, unlike right now, Freddy could do literally nothing to an awake survivor. He would just have to put them asleep again, wait up to 7 seconds, and then eat M1U. At this time, one of the most used and popular survivor perks was Self-Care from Claudette. This perk allows a survivor to heal themselves at 50% of usual healing speed. This meant a survivor could heal themselves with Self-Care in around 30 seconds, give or take. This also had the side effect of giving you skill checks, meaning survivors had a way to wake themselves up at all times. So survivors constantly had a way to wake themselves up anytime. The character was toothless for a lot of the match and had literally no extra help in chasing once in the dream world to try and save him from being completely worthless. But what was it that survivors hated about him? As you can imagine, a 50% debuff to your repairs and healing speeds is, on paper, extremely oppressive. Again though, waking up was extremely accessible and relatively free to do. People just refused to learn what to do against Freddy, and once they did gradually learn, Freddy plummeted to the absolute bottom of tier list, helped along with the rounds of nerfs he received shortly after release. Despite Freddy's vibes being immaculate, he was incredibly weak, competing with Skull Merchant in a battle of dogshit versus dogshit that'll last for all of eternity. The nerfs were completely uncompensated. The only thing he was given were small, meaningless changes that could hardly qualify as buffs. Behavior took an already bad killer and further butchered him. This led to killer players, specifically Freddy players, asking for buffs or a full-on rework to the character. Finally, in July of 2019, the Nightmare was given his first ever rework in Dead by Daylight's 3 years of existence. 2019 was a weird time to be playing Dead by Daylight. It seemed like Behavior was starting to take the idea of balancing the game seriously, with nerfs to overpowered perks like Decisive Strike, but then they also introduced ridiculous perks like Medal of Man, literally 3 weeks apart from each other. There were some growing pains that the community and developers both had to get through. It really was 1 step forward, 2 steps back, which is a perfect way to describe this rework. In order to be completely fair, in this section I'm going to utilize some clips from DbD's 3rd year anniversary to give us a better look at the perspective of the balancing team. The first thing we need to cover is the new vision for Freddy, in their words.
So the old Freddy, as I was mentioning, he was like a delay type of game character with very simple mechanics where he just puts people to sleep. Now we're looking to add map mobility in addition to an active power that you can use within chases. And he still has the deviousness aspect of him, but no more interaction debuff.
So, in this clip, the lead designer discusses the philosophy and the team's changes for Freddy. He was a very simple killer that would put people to sleep. They mentioned that he was a delay character, immediately mentioning that Freddy has an active power, as well as mobility too, which, at this time, not a lot of killers actually had, so this was a genuinely big deal for this character. As for the active power, it was a bit obvious that Freddy would get a power. That was the major issue for the killer. Dude had legit nothing to help him in chase, which at a time where maps would spawn upwards of 25 pallets, it was extremely important to have something. This next clip is where we really get to start to get into the meat of the rework. Quite frankly, outside of the promised mobility, nothing here was really groundbreaking for the character.
So we're looking at 2 main components. We're looking at a new sleep cycle and new dream abilities.
Okay, so let's start. So there we see it. So a sleep cycle and a dream ability. Before that, you just had to put the survivors to sleep. You had to aim your power. Now you're talking about a sleep cycle. What changed on this? Because it's completely different.
So the sleep cycle has 3 components to it. It has microsleep, which is the first one I'm going to talk about. Ultimately, players will experience Freddy differently. So when you're awake, he'll be intermittent at a certain distance, invisible past a certain distance, and completely visible within a tight range. You'll hear the terror radius by default instead of the lullaby. And that's pretty much it for the default microsleep. And you can hit people right away as Freddy. You don't have to wait for them to fall asleep.
Oh.
They begin by discussing microsleep, which is not only something that happened in the 2010 remake where Freddy is taken from, but also apparently happens in real life too. This is something that is currently still a part of Freddy's kit today, and cards on the table, this is genuinely what I think is the best part of the entire rework. It really encapsulates the terror of a character like Freddy. Yes, this is going to be one of those videos. So, no matter what you do, he is inevitably going to be able to get his hands on you. The flickering in and out of existence was adapted perfectly from the source material, which, from an era of Dead by Daylight which was more focused on the vibes more than the actual strength of something, this was done very well. The terror radius and lullaby were flipped. Now survivors would hear the lullaby while asleep, which does help a lot with his stealth, while unfortunately limiting his perk choices. This is one of the biggest losses of the change. Before this, Freddy's lullaby would be audible while you were awake and gradually increase in volume once you were put into the dream world. Up till current day, Freddy's dream world perk synergy has been hindered severely. We also learned that Freddy can now hit survivors or M1 them without needing to manually put them asleep. Again, not really shocked these days, but going off my memory, this is one of the most shocking things in the reveal. I just could not believe that Freddy would no longer need to put survivors into the dream world to interact with them. This is the first dent, though, in the proverbial armor when it comes to one of the 3 points I brought up earlier: over-buffing, over-nerfing, and watering down. This standardized Freddy a bit, taking away a unique aspect to him in pursuit of making the killer stronger. We now move on to the Dream abilities, as they are called here, the original version of Freddy's snares and pallets. I have my own opinion on both these powers in their first form, but before we get to those, let's hear what the design team's big idea was with both.
So this is the Dream abilities.
Okay.
He's got Dream traps, and he's got something else. I'm going to go into that after. It's a little teaser right now. So we start with Dream pallets. Dream pallets, not like the Doctor, but similar to the Doctor. You can place Dream pallets on spawn points throughout the map, where pallets would normally spawn, to place these fake pallets. Awake survivors do not see these pallets, so you have to play like a memory game and remember which ones were not there before you fell asleep, and then when you fall asleep, there will be fake pallets. These fake pallets, when you interact with them and drop them, they explode in blood. So we're choosing between the Dream pallets and the Dream snares. For those of you at home, we're not sure if we're going to go for both in this base kit. It might be one that turns into an add-on, or the other one is base kit. The Dream snares is an ability that you can use actively within a chase. It only affects sleeping survivors. And when you place it on the ground, it will take 2 seconds to arm, and when a survivor walks over it, they will be slowed for the time that the trap is active and for a lingering effect after that. Some people saw a charge bar in the video, the anniversary stream, if they're paying attention really closely. This is the generator teleport. So ultimately, as Freddy, you can aim at a generator, and you can channel an ability for 5 seconds. After the 5 seconds, you will appear at the generator.
So right now we're seeing footage of it from the killer's point of view. So you just aim to the generator and you just get there, right?
Exactly. You can also cancel it. Ultimately, the generator will explode in blood during the time period while you're channeling, and a husk of Freddy will also appear at the generator.
So, pallets were meant to be a sort of mischievous power that Freddy could use to trick survivors into going somewhere they really do not want to be. They use the example of a memory gain, which is a good way to explain it, but doesn't necessarily capture the truth of the situation. Unlike today, the fake pallets cannot be ruptured to damage a survivor, however, also could not stun Freddy. Interestingly enough, when talking about the Dream snares, they briefly say they considered giving him both powers base kit. Now, we all know they did eventually decide to give the snare to Freddy as his base kit power, while tying the pallets to an add-on. The final ability was the Dream Projection, which seemed to be the one ability that the design team was most excited to announce. So, let's now dissect the power a bit. Dream pallets, while they were extremely fun, were never strong. Survive with Friends made the ability completely meaningless. Not only that, but survivors just being able to remember the shack pallet had been used already made them worthless as well. While extremely fun is satisfying, they were a straight up downgrade from the main power that did not require an add-on at all to use, that being the Dream snares. The snares were infinitely stronger than the pallets, and they were a genuinely good ability, if not a bit uninspired. The similarities to clown bottles were extremely noticeable. They shared the exact same hinder time at a time where the game didn't have so many similar killers, so they could have been more different. The Dream Projection did its job, I suppose. It's worth saying that Freddy, for whatever reason, could not teleport to finished generators. It also had a massive 45-second cooldown. However, canceling it early would give you a decent chunk of your projection cooldown back. So now that we've covered the rework, with the title of the video, you would probably be forgiven for assuming that Freddy was weak after this. But you'd be wrong, actually. After this rework, Freddy was consistently at the top of the kill rates and considered one of the top 4 killers in the game. Things were looking extremely good for Freddy. He had bounced all the way from the bottom of the tier list to near the top. However, this strength had less to do with Freddy's Dream abilities and more focused on the goofy add-ons he had. Let's take a quick look at his add-ons from the time. Yeah, these seem fine. Wait. Go back. Go back. What was that? Yeah, so for some reason, they decided to re-add the repair debuff while inside the Dream World, which birthed one of the most hated playstyles in Dead by Daylight. Forever Freddy. The build is extremely simple. Old Ruin, Pop Goes the Weasel, Thanatophobia, Thrilling Tremors, or Dying Light. This build would genuinely drag games to a complete halt. Forever Freddy walked so Knight and Skull Merchant could run. This led to Freddy, once again, being one of the most hated killers, if not the most hated killer in the game. Behavior, always quick to react to massive issues in their game, struck like lightning a mere year and a half later by hitting Freddy with some massive nerfs in patch 4.7.0. This patch reduced the amount of snares and pallets Freddy could hold, as well as lowering his movement speed to 4 meters per second, or 100% movement speed. We also saw adjustments to the Forever Freddy add-ons which made them laughably bad. However, I want to focus my attention on the 30 seconds of not being able to put to sleep. If you pair this with the nerf to the snares, because this is truly what I think put the proverbial nail in Freddy's coffin. It has always been weird to me to slow a character down when they're using a tool meant to help them gain distance. I just never really understood the idea behind making someone regain the distance they had lost while prepping their power. This alone, I think Freddy could have survived, but the buffs to clocks would turn Freddy into man with glove for at the very least the next 30 seconds every time a survivor used a clock. The Forever Freddy nerfs would have knocked him down the tier list quite a bit, but the snares were still genuinely good at giving him an upper hand. Paired with Dream Projection, he could utilize meta perks very well, but all of this in one update, he was left soaking up more damage than fucking Reinhardt. He went from a strong killer to gutter tier terrible literally overnight. And all of this is why I consider the first Freddy rework the most disappointing in the game's history. He gave up some of the best thematics in the game in exchange for watered down, recycled power that was extremely overpowered and then borderline useless. He hit all 3 checks of my rework is a failure checklist. Fortunately this year, Freddy received one of the best reworks that Dead by Daylight has ever seen. Thematically, he fits enough to satisfy a Nightmare and Elm Street fan. Gameplay-wise, he's satisfying and strong enough to be played comfortably, which is really all I can ask for in a rework. However, for years, Freddy was one of the most forgettable, boring, uninspired killer designs in DbD history, and because of that, I can't help but look at this as one of the worst redesigns in the history of the game. If you enjoyed the video, please do consider leaving a like. It helps me out quite a bit. If you really enjoyed it and want to see more Dead by Daylight Yap videos, you can subscribe to catch the next one. Leave a comment, join the Discord, check me out on Twitch. Both those links are in the description. My name is Kasir, and I hope I'll see you next time. Goodbye, everyone.